beautiful in the ordinary and how that relates to hypnosis. One of my favourite films is called American Beauty. It won a bunch of awards, though it gets a few dissenting critics deeming it pretentious. And I can understand why, but I love the film nonetheless. And my favourite character is called Ricky Fitz. And he records things on his camcorder that he finds interesting and beautiful. Yet others may find the same things ordinary, even mundane. And this is depicted wonderfully as Ricky watches a plastic bag blowing around in the wind against a wall, and he thinks it's lovely to watch. And it's this idea of finding beauty in the ordinary that I want to start with in this video today, and then relate that to ordinary psychological processes with regards to how we define what hypnosis is. Last night, I was sat in bed reading a sci-fi novel. It was pretty early by most people's standards, as I just put my son to bed, and my wife was just getting our daughter to bed. As I sat there, I could hear him humming, just gently singing in his really high-pitched voice, offering up some of the loveliest random tuneless la-la-las that I've ever heard. And I put my book down, turned the light off, leant back, propped my head up against a pillow and just listened as he sang and drifted off into his own little dream world. Now, to me, it was majestic, utterly heartwarming. I've listened to the dawn chorus of the birds in the New Forest here in Dorset. I've had the pleasure of listening to my good friend playing lead cello for the London Symphony Orchestra. I've delighted in live recordings of Iggy Pop singing Search and Destroy. All of which I thought were wonderful and among my favourite things to listen to. But all of these paled in comparison to how much I adored listening to my son singing himself to sleep. Likewise, my baby daughter really recently fell asleep in my arms, and as her breathing changed, as she fell deeper to sleep, her little snores got louder, sometimes even had a squeak to them. And she'd then pause in her breathing and sigh as she exhaled and carried on with these dinky snores. And you know, I've slept in a room with some snoring noises of mammoth proportions before, on floors with drunken university friends, in bedrooms with family members, on trains with total strangers, and none have been anything other than grating and distracting. Yet my daughter gently, snoring in my arms is delightful. At the beginning of January, I wrote on my Hypnotherapy College Facebook page that I ran my first Sunday long run of the year, and as part of my ultramarathon training for that year, I was up and out of the door at 6 a.m, car windows iced over, the stars were clear in the sky. My first few miles was spent being mindful, warming up, enjoying running, and then onto the seafront with a hint of red in the backdrop. I listened to the waves crashing in on the seafront, pushed my pace some, engaged in some self-hypnosis for altering my perceived level of effort. I spent the final 3 miles on the way home listening to drum and bass music, totally dissociated. Got home in time to shower, have breakfast with my family. And as with hypnosis, the ordinary psychological processes can seem, and truly are, really magical at times. For me, this was a magnificent start to the year. I don't always delight in those things when I'm up at dawn out running, and I know loads of runners don't necessarily enjoy the seemingly mundane aspects of their runs when they're running 5 or 6 times a week. So why am I indulging myself here on this Hypnosis Geek YouTube channel today? And what's the connection with hypnosis here? It's not as tenuous as you might think. You see, I find all of these kind of mentioned things to be beautiful, truly beautiful. Others may not, I do. I find them magnificent because of my own personal attitude and perspective of them. I have a particular mindset that flavours my responses and relationship with these occurrences. And these things are all very ordinary, yet they yield truly magical outcomes and experiences to me. So I'll connect this to hypnosis and self-hypnosis. Hypnotism was developed in its modern format by James Braid back in the 1840s and entailed a more common sense psychological explanation of the apparent effects of mesmerism, which was a historical precursor of hypnotism. And Braid defined hypnotism as focused attention upon an expectant dominant idea or image. Later, Hippolyte Bernheim, a very important figure in the history of hypnotism, said that there was no such thing as hypnosis other than heightened suggestibility, and he named his approach suggestive therapeutics back in the 1880s. So hypnotism is essentially the art and science of suggestion and not that of inducing trances or altered states of consciousness. A 1941 paper written by the personality theorist Robert White was entitled A Preface to the Theory of Hypnotism and is considered by many to be the beginning of a non-state cognitive, socio-cognitive approach to hypnosis. Research cited by White in this seminal article suggests that responses to hypnosis are primarily a result of the conscious attitudes and voluntary efforts of the individual. And he redefined hypnosis as follows. Hypnotic behavior is meaningful, goal-directed striving, its most general goal being to behave like a hypnotized person, as this is continuously defined by the operator and understood by the client. So White took the perspective that hypnosis is actually a verb rather than a noun. It's a skill that the individual does. It's not a passive state that automatically happens in a mechanical fashion in response to something a hypnotist does. And White supported the notion, and it wasn't the first time this notion was supported, that all hypnosis is to some extent self-hypnosis or a process of hypnotizing oneself. And non-state theorists apply healthy skepticism when explaining hypnosis. They look at it in rational terms and with Braid's original approach of Scottish common sense. In contrast to the popular trance state way of explaining hypnosis, based upon extensive scientific research, we explain hypnosis in terms of a hypnotic mindset, comprising of ordinary processes such as beliefs, imagination, expectations, attitude towards hypnosis, level of motivation, the depth of engagement with the role of being hypnotized, and some other factors. But the term hypnosis simply refers to a set of attitudes and behaviors that facilitate hypnotic responses, and not that of an altered state of consciousness or a hypnotic trance of some kind. As Barber, Spanos and Chavez said in the 1970s. You know, to add some meat to the bones of this, you can go grab a copy of my book, The Science of Self-Hypnosis, the evidence-based way to hypnotize yourself, because there is a great deal more to this particular discussion, this model, this explanation, that I can offer up in a simplistic soundbite here. To experience hypnosis or self-hypnosis, you simply need to engage in a hypnotic mindset. Which simply means that you are motivated to hypnotize, you're confident in your ability to respond, you're optimistic about the hypnosis process, and that you expect to automatically experience the responses being suggested or imagined. And if you adopt this mindset, you'll derive more benefit from hypnosis and become much more responsive to hypnosis. And this hypnotic mindset may seem sobering and a far cry from the magical way that hypnosis is often presented. And some people do not like having that magic whipped away from them. However, one important consequence is that the role of the hypnotic subject, the role of the self-hypnotist as well, it's demystified, it's made more easily learnable. In order for you to be a successful hypnotic subject or a self-hypnotist, you learn further evidence-based hypnotic skills. You apply therapeutic beneficial protocols and adopt this hypnotic mindset throughout. So today I conclude that hypnotism is basically about inducing a set of attitudes, a mindset, and that the hypnotic subject learns to adopt this favorable attitude to get into the mindset prior to engaging in hypnosis. You can see then that my own set of attitudes, expectancies and mindset affects my responses to things like my son singing himself to sleep, my daughter snoring, the way I perceive the environment of my long runs during ultra running training, which are all fairly ordinary in the perspective of others, yet become magical to me. The same as Ricky Fitz finding a plastic bag, a beautiful thing to watch. Likewise, engaging in ordinary processes with a particular set of attitudes can create what we know as hypnosis, which can be magical in many ways too. I speak of this often. Within my business, it's important ethos that we undersell and over-deliver. With hypnotherapy, with courses, with products, we're sober about them. At times, I'm even accused of attempting to put people off. Yet I think the results, the outcomes, and what we offer up over-delivers on those initial sober expectations. And I think that's better than overselling how amazing and magical hypnosis and hypnotherapy are, than failing to deliver on that, failing to live up to some very high expectations. And the same with hypnosis and the way we conceptualize it. I explain it in sober, ordinary terms. That it's a process formed of ordinary psychological principles and processes, but when all that comes together, the magic is the end result. Let's stop trying to sell it as something magical and start to consider being sober about it. Let's stop overselling it and get realistic in order that we can then marvel at the beauty of the ordinary.